Welcome to Dreams and Delivery, a podcast for tech professionals, real stories from people who deliver at work and dream beyond it. I'm your host, Kagan.
By day, I'm a staff technical program manager in big tech. By night, I'm a musician and a sound bath meditation practitioner.
Welcome to Dreams and Delivery. I'm your host, Kagan. This is a conversation about the human side of AI, how people actually think, create, work, and make decisions with these systems. We'll talk about AI dreaming, what it really means, and we'll cover what it's like to go from a staff level role in big tech to building something completely of your own. Today, I'm joined by AaronKagan, founder of GraspingAI, a human-centered AI research and strategy practice. Trained in philosophy, cognitive science, and UX research, he spent his career studying how people think, make decisions, and work with complex technologies. He's led research and AI-related initiatives at Google X, Meta Reality Labs, Native Instruments, and Articulate, and is co-author of An Introduction to the Embodied Mind, Thinking Outside the Head. Today, he helps individuals and organizations build better relationships with AI through research, strategy, and education. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thank you so much. It's like to be here. Thanks for having me.
So nice to see you. Yeah. Aaron and I worked together at Native Instruments years ago, and it's just great to connect with you years later and just see everything that you've built. The work landscape's really changed a lot compared to 5 years back when we were just leaving Native, and now completely different playing field.
Yeah, it's a different space and things change. None of this stuff can last forever, and things grow and take off, and everyone kind of has to adapt in their own way and see where the next iteration of things is taking us. And right now it's a really tumultuous period of transition, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, I think with AI in the playing field, it's making a lot of things easier, but also a little bit different. And we can get into it more in the convo today, but I wanted to give you the chance to just intro yourself and how you ended up working at the intersection of cognitive science, philosophy of mind, and AI. Is such a unique center to be.
I appreciate it. It's always been the same thing for me, but I'd say I got into philosophy because I really wanted to understand the minds, like perception and consciousness and all those sort of big questions were really interesting to me. And then in the university and academia in general, I was like, that's it. That's the thing to do. And I'm going to do that forever. And then I pushed for that, and lots of different bumps in the roads and setbacks and things happened. And when I got towards the end of the PhD, I was like, I kind of want to go into some of this other stuff. I was always interested in like how the things worked in with neuroscience and biology, and that kind of led me to cognitive science and some of this embodied cognition stuff, which I'm happy to talk about. And that led me to UX research, where the theory kind of meets real people and real practice. And I think throughout all of it, I've spent my career studying that gap between how do people really think and how do technologies that we are making assume people think. And AI being right now one of the most important technologies that forces us to revisit these questions. So the stuff that I've been interested in is now critically relevant in a lot of different ways.
Could you tell us maybe the short version of what is embodied cognition? Why does that matter in AI?
Yeah, sure. So the UX folks in the audience might understand this from like a affordances standpoint. People talk about that with UX design as a thing, graspable or clickable, and cognitive offloading is another term that often happens in tech that people understand. But embodied cognition is at the base of all that. It says intelligence doesn't really live inside the head. It emerges from brains, bodies, environments, tools, and other people working together in the right sorts of ways to basically talk about where cognition happens. It's not just happening in the head, right? And that's one of the biggest lessons there. And because of that, the biggest lesson right now in AI and what we're developing here is that a lot of organizations are having a problem with collective knowledge or understanding things or people cognitively offloading in different ways. And they really don't have this AI problem, I'd call it. It's more of a human AI coordination problem. We coordinate together easily, talking about different things or sharing memories and stuff like that. But we don't do that as well with artificial systems that work like this. We do it pretty well with calendars, right? I didn't remember what time this meeting was, but I knew that I could look it up on my calendar, and like that memory was offloaded because I knew I could access it quickly and easily. But that happens with easy stuff like notebooks and stuff that is pretty reliable.
Yeah, maybe we could get into a little bit about AI strategy because I've
Mhm.
seen AI transformations happen at companies where they'll say, all right, here's the tools, go do it.
Yeah.
Become X% improved in your efficiencies without being very intentional about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway here really is that like it's for a lot of us, at least for those of us who aren't actually building these models, it's not really about building smarter models. It's about building the relationships between humans and these models or these systems. So what I've seen happen in most organizations, which are, when I say most organizations, not like the ones that are building a lot of these things, is they end up treating the technology as a problem or as a product, right? AI is just saying the internet, right? It's too big of a target. What is it exactly? Are we talking about large language models? Are we talking about different kinds of robotics or different kinds of predictive processes? And people end up chasing different kinds of tools rather than the capabilities, and they focus on models like, oh, this one's smarter than that one, and ignore how people are naturally working now, and don't invest as much in AI literacy or even judgment about this sort of thing, because it's very easy to output polished seeming stuff very quickly, and people don't necessarily know how to use them unless they're like really heavily invested in this stuff. And we see this today. More recent things I've seen are a lot of companies who invested heavily in one product or another for the organization have already burned through all of their credits like in the first quarter, and now they've got to buy more. And that isn't necessarily the most efficient use of the tooling, right? I don't think a lot of folks who understand how this worked would go through it those that fast and what it actually is changing. Recent thing, one last nerd thing I'll say about this is like even so Norman put an article out a couple of days ago about they interviewed, it wasn't a huge study, but they interviewed a lot of people who are not software developers but use AI for hours and hours a day. And what they found is that they actually are not learning anything new. They're learning how to get better outputs, but the skill of, okay, this is a thing that could potentially teach me or walk me through something. They're just getting outputs over and over, and that knowledge about how to use it is not increasing, and nor are the things that they should necessarily be getting better at. So it's a really tough one right now. And I think for
Yeah.
us in tech, we are this is a usability problem. And I don't just say this because I'm a UX person, but it doesn't matter what the technology is. If the user doesn't interact with it correctly, everybody has a bad time.
Yeah, so true. And things are evolving so fast where, say, a year ago, I think the focus was on prompt engineering and just making sure you're prompting, whereas now we've moved more into feedback loops where you don't want to just prompt, you want to let it continue to run without you and then give you an output that is really thought out well.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I keep hearing lately that AI can dream. Can it
Mhm.
really? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think AI, I'd say from a very open-minded and deeply like theoretical philosophical perspective, I would say that it maybe can, but not in the way that humans do, right? This technology doesn't sleep. It doesn't have a body or desires or emotions or like lived experience, right? Those are the things that are usually all prerequisites for dreaming, at least for as far as we know. But it can generate combinations and associations of things that can almost feel dreamlike to us. And so the question doesn't become necessarily whether it dreams. It's like, why do we experience these outputs as meaningful or creative or surprising, right? And we even use terms like hallucination, and like that could almost be a dreamlike. You're sort of in a fugue state and you have a hallucination, for example. But what's fascinating about that term is that it causes us to think that the system is doing this very human-like thing, like maybe they hallucinated it or they took mushrooms or something like that. When in actuality, what it output is not a hallucination. It's, as we know from tech and as we say, this is working as intended. The system is doing literally what it's designed to do. So it's not actually doing anything
Yeah.
wrong. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do. So that's different from saying you have a calculator and you say what's 8 times 8, and it outputs like 8,020, and you're like, wait, that the calculator is broken. That's not how it's supposed to work. But because it's gonna output something very specific every single time. We don't have that with hallucination. It did what it was programmed to do in the way that it does what it does. And part of that opaqueness from even an engineering standpoint is interesting, and part of that opaqueness from what we expect it to do and how we even talk about it is very interesting. It's like it's misleading in some ways, but it also helps us use it faster and more efficiently. So it's a very nuanced kind of thing. And I'd say that the dreaming thing is a great way to get into that conversation.
Yeah, because when I think of dreaming as someone who's creative, makes music,
Yeah.
I'll just have ideas pop up in my head
Yeah.
unbidden. Versus when I think of AI dreaming, it's more of a retrieval,
Yeah.
just in a way that is a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. I'd almost look at it as like a dream enhancer or a dream organizer. Like they used to call, like back in the human factors days, they had guys in the lab of, know that term rubber ducking, like that they use sometimes
Yeah.
in corporate. Yeah, a bunch of guys in a lab are trying to work on a problem, and before they bug somebody else, they got to go in some corner somewhere with a rubber duck and talk it out. And a rubber duck obviously doesn't do anything, but it allows the person to work through whatever it is, and they may have solved the problem without interrupting anyone else, right? And this is even more interesting and automated way of doing that. So there are times where I'll try to work through a gnarly problem and just be walking and talking through that, and it says something back to me, and I'm not thinking that it's going to solve my problem. It actually is a reflection of my thinking or a reflection of myself. Say, oh, okay, I seem to be indexing on this or going through that, and it can bring together interesting associations. And like we do in music or any kind of creative endeavors, are you experimenting and playing and throwing things around and seeing what it sounds like? That's a easy analogy is if we were working in a DAW or some sort of audio workstation, and you started like clicking around and said, okay, what happened if I move this over here and this and that, hit the space bar and it plays, and you're like, oh, that's what that is. It's a similar kind of thing. It's more like that than I would say doing its own dreaming or kind of creativity.
Yeah, it's like still following some sort of sequence that was either
Yeah.
defined by you or whatever skill you've loaded.
Yeah,
So, yeah, curious to see how it evolves over time.
me too.
So, shifting a little bit into how you went independent and built your own thing, could you
Yeah.
tell us what was it like leaving corporate and
Yeah.
creating Grasping AI?
Yeah, leaving corporate was interesting. Things are growing and changing so quickly. There's less stability, there's less predictability of what's happening. And I saw that the industry's changing rapidly. AI is changing how knowledge work, kind of stuff that we do happens. And starting this, I initially said, okay, the work I was doing could be leveraged even more so if I went independent. It's almost like we're going through a platform shift. Similar thing happened when the internet came out, right? Every business thought they needed a website. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And usually it's in between. It's like a bagel shop just needed a static HTML page with the information on it, while as other ones might have needed like e-com and customer service and all kinds of functionality. But that means every business has a website, but not in the ways that you'd think. Same thing happened with when we went mobile, right? It needed to be mobile friendly, or everybody needed an app. That's sort of something that we all saw. Similarly, this transition feels similar to that. So companies can use this technology, they can leverage it. They need to do it in the right ways, or ways that are good for them. And they also can potentially shoot themselves in the foot by over indexing on it or over leveraging AI. And so this was a chance to help businesses do that, but also pursue questions I had been thinking about in general around human AI collaboration, what expertise means, decision making, cognition as a future of working together. And these changes are happening across a number of disciplines in an accelerated way. And as we know in corporate, it's hard to collaborate in certain ways, do interdisciplinary work, and pursue things experimentally in these kinds of environments. And that's what accelerated that decision to go independent, and then to go with the sort of 2.0 that's happening this next couple of days with the group of folks that I've been building this with.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that'd be a great chance to share more about the 2.0 that you're building.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's turned into a human-centered like research and strategy practice, or almost like a studio, where on the one hand we help organizations build better relationships with AI, not just like adopting tools, telling them how to learn and think, but there's also the front of this really is about community. It's not your typical sort of consultancy or some of these other cottage industry things that have popped up. This is about large scale dialogue and understanding for everyone to leverage this technology well, and experimentation and everyone contributing in this kind of dialogue. And that information then lends itself towards things that people can use. So they're like, speaking of prompt engineering, there are kinds of ways that you can become a better consumer, for example, of all these different products. If you have your own product agnostic set of prompts about yourself and throw those into the different products, and then you can have an apples to comparison. Say, oh, I heard an advertisement that this new model came out and it's smarter. How is it going to know you if you have some costs with another one, right? So this is one of the things we're doing in the next couple of months, is having open workshops where people can learn to do these things. And if organization wants to help that, then we can help them do some customized and proprietary kinds of things. But this is about experimentation openly and working out in the open with a community of people first, then bringing that into organizations and into business.
I love that, because really having that cross section of people from various disciplines being able
Yeah.
to form some point of view around AI. And I know responsible AI has been one topic that's been coming up a lot for everybody. I could definitely see that being discussed in that sort of
Yeah.
forum. For somebody who is starting out thinking of building their own thing, what kind of advice would you give them? Maybe just little tips to get started.
Yeah. I'd say some of the latest today is that it is, in some ways, it's never been easier to do and less scary and less risky. And in other ways, it's much harder because of the landscape. The tooling, the ability to hang out a shingle is quite easy. What I'd say is, don't, I'd say follow what you are passionate about and try to realize that, but also stay very conservative into how much you over engineer the stuff. So there's a lot of, it's easy to cosplay like corporate stuff and sort of recreate some of the things you might be used to from larger organizations. That isn't necessary until you have the need for that. Sometimes it can slow you down. It is incredibly freeing to be able to try any tool or to go through anything without any restrictions and not have this muzzle or constraints, which is wonderful. And I'd say just to stay with like-minded folks, figure out the cheapest minimum viable way to go about this, and stay motivated and stay making progress every single day. And it's almost like similar to writing my dissertation or a book or like larger things. It's just sort of brick by brick building this sort of larger thing. And I wouldn't be as worried about things like funding and all the sort of traditional startup models these days, because you can get away with, depending on what you're offering, you can get away with a lot, and it stays your own, and it stays less scary in terms of a big push before you know whether this thing's going to work or not. And just try and experiment as much as you can.
As someone who has a child, curious of how you're thinking about incorporating learning
Mm,
in this new age of AI.
yeah. So that part in that we talk about how he should be engaging with technology, right? We're always thinking about screen time. That was one thing, but then we've got these systems that are frictionless that can serve up information. I think about things like necessary friction involved in learning and growth. These things don't feel good. How do we instill these kinds of things in a person so that they get that thirst for knowledge and growth and learn it in sort of right sort of ways, right? And I also think about what these technologies mean for education. There's stuff on either end, right? And there's things that we can control as parents and the environment, and there's other things that are going to be out of our control. And one of the one of the best phrases I heard from my cousin-in-law early days when my wife was pregnant, and we were like, when you have the time to think about all the intellectual stuff you want to do before you're sleep deprived and just going on basic primal primate instinct to keep the kid alive, he said, you don't prepare the path for the child, you prepare the child for the path, which I really like, because there's only certain things that you can do. It's about instilling those kinds of instincts. I think there's going to be some stuff around the next level of learning. We had a lot in our sort of earlier generations with information literacy, and everything seems, because it's in typeface, everything seems authoritative or fake media and interesting stuff like that. This is almost to a whole other level where you have things that are sycophantic and can get you in your own further echo chambers, or really preventing you from learning. So I could just ask AI to do it. Why do I need to go ahead and learn this thing myself and trying to figure out where that sits. My hope is he's going to be 2 in about a month from now. And my hope is that maybe when it's even more critical, some of this stuff will have figured itself out in terms of like policy and regulation and computers and things in the classroom and how we go about that sort of thing. All this is to say, I have no idea what I'm doing, as any parent should honestly say they don't, because we just don't know. It's going to be what it is. We go on instinct and we try to do the best we can for the stuff that we can control as a parent.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. GraspingAI.com, GraspingAI.com. Find me on LinkedIn, AaronKagan. And yeah, there's plenty of places to sign up and connect with me from there. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
To everyone listening, if this resonated, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. I'm Christine Kahn, and this is Dreams and Delivery.